Max Verstappen threatens to leave F1 for the 100th time. Daniel's future is all but confirmed, and McLaren is unhappy about Red Bull's use of the second team. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. McLaren team boss Andrea Stella has called for the relationship between Red Bull and RB to be addressed after Daniel Ricciardo's peculiar fastest lap at the Singapore Grand Prix stole a point away from race winner Lando Norris. With McLaren dominant around Marina Bay, Norris was looking at taking 8 points out of Max Verstappen's lead at the top of the Drivers' Championship, having set the fastest time on lap 48. However, that extra point was lost as Ricciardo, running at the back of the field in what increasingly appears to be his last race in Formula One, came into the pits for a fresh set of soft tires and went almost half a second quicker than Norris's best effort on his final lap. Ricciardo does not get a point as he finished outside the top 10, but with the McLaren now clearly the fastest car on the grid, everything could count as Norris aims to close a 52-point gap to Red Bull's Verstappen in the final 6 rounds of the season. While Stella did not outright accuse Red Bull and its sister team of collusion in Singapore, he said a more long-term discussion might be required about the closeness of the two squads. This is a big matter. You know, as soon as you invoke the sportsmanship, I think you need to approach this with a sense of responsibility that I want to have, he said when asked about the call. I don't know the facts. I just saw that RB went for the fastest lap and they achieved it. But for me here, talk about sportsmanship and so on, I think it would be out of place. So I think we have to take it at face value. They scored the fastest lap, and potentially as part of a longer-term conversation, we need to put the sport in a position in which, at any stage, being it trackside or being it factory side, teams behave in a totally autonomous manner, because this is a constructors' championship. This needs to be definitely addressed, but at no point I have elements now to say RB went for the fastest lap to support the Red Bull. I just find it a little, how to say, peculiar. I did not see it coming. I was a little surprised that the highest priority of RB racing in Singapore was to go and score the fastest lap of the race. I think we just have to work harder to make sure that this championship doesn't come down to a point. At the same time, I have so much sympathy, support, and friendship with Daniel that I'm just happy that he may add this fastest lap to his track record. Norris said the two teams made a smart play in securing the fastest lap for former McLaren teammate Ricciardo, admitting it was the logical thing to do. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner would not be drawn on the situation and said it was up to RB to explain their reasoning, although Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez revealed the team had considered pitting him to aim for the fastest time. I don't know what happened there. I think the team was discussing it, so I think in the end we decided to stay as it was decided anyway. I think the team was thinking about it, but in the end it didn't happen, he concluded. Max Verstappen has said his punishment for swearing in an FIA press conference has left him reconsidering his Formula One future. For the second day running, Verstappen gave monosyllabic responses to questions raised by journalists in the FIA press conference. Afterwards, his Red Bull team facilitated a second press conference where he would freely reply. With journalists crammed into the Red Bull hospitality, Verstappen was first asked about his decision not to open up in the FIA press conference, born as a consequence of his community service punishment for using the word "fags" in a live FIA press conference on Thursday. When asked by Autosport if this latest punishment was making him reconsider his future, he replied, "For sure, yeah. I mean, these kinds of things definitely decide my future as well. When you can't be yourself, you have to deal with these kinds of silly things. I'm at a stage of my career that I don't want to be dealing with this all the time. It's really tiring. Of course, it's great to have success and win races, but once you have accomplished all that, winning championships and races, then you want to just have a good time as well. Everyone is pushing to the limit, everyone in this battle, even at the back of the grid. But if you have to deal with all these kind of silly things, for me, that is not a way of continuing in the sport, that's for sure." When asked if he thought F1's governing body was aware it risked losing a multiple world champion, he said, "I don't know how serious they will take that kind of stuff. But for me, of course, at one point, when it's enough, it's enough. We'll see. Everything will go on in Formula One without me. It's not a problem, but it's also not a problem for me. So it's how it is." Verstappen, relaxed and engaged in something of a cathartic experience, also opened up on if the threat of punishment was depriving him of being authentic. "Yeah, for sure. If you can't really be yourself to the fullest, then it's better not to speak at the end of the day," he said. But that's what no one wants, because then you become a robot, and that's not how you should be going about it in the sport. Verstappen, who finished in second place in the Singapore GP behind Lando Norris, was probed further on why he felt he was being punished, to which he said, "It's all a bit too soft, really, and honestly, it's super silly what we're dealing with." The three-time world champion has promised to continue his own press conferences going forward, but there is a chance of ending his standoff with the authorities, providing it is a discussion with F1 chiefs as well as the FIA. However, he said it is clear that things need to change, pointing out to how Carlos Sainz was fined $25,000 for crossing a live track after he crashed out in qualifying. "Carlos got a fine crossing the track as well," he explained. "Whatever you're talking about, it's a red flag. Cars are coming into the pits. I think it's quite safe and he knows what he's doing. We're not stupid." Again, these kind of things. When I saw it, even getting noted, I'm like, my God, what are we doing? These kind of things are just, for me, super silly. Daniel Ricciardo has conceded maybe the fairy tale ending didn't happen in his run to 18th at the Singapore Grand Prix, if it was his last ever Formula One race. RB reserve Liam Lawson has been heavily linked to his drive for the remainder of the season, with Ricciardo unable to show significant improvement across his return to F1 after sitting out for half of 2023. Although Ricciardo remained cagey on his future over the weekend, he was evidently deflated after a difficult race in which he was the last of the remaining cars on track, albeit with the fastest lap in his pocket after making a late third stop for soft tires. Speaking to Sky Sports F1, Ricciardo said that he was proud of his 13 years racing in F1, and added that although he paid little attention to F1's Driver of the Day award, he admitted it meant a little something to receive it in what could be his final Grand Prix. "I have to acknowledge why I came back after the McLaren stint, and I always said I didn't want to come back just to be on the grid," said Ricciardo. "I wanted to try and fight back at the front and get back with Red Bull. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition, so then I also have to ask myself the question, what else can I achieve? What else is there to really go for? I put my best foot forward. Let's say maybe the fairy tale ending didn't happen, but I also have to look back on what's been 13 or so years and I'm proud. Typically, the driver of the day thing is maybe not something us drivers look too much into, but today I can say it's something I'm appreciative of. So that one means a little something." Ricciardo also told F1 TV that he had a lot of emotions because I'm aware that could be it. "I think it's also just being exhausted after the race. There's so much, just like a flood of many emotions and feelings and exhaustion, and the cockpit is something that I got very used to for many years, and I just wanted to savor the moment." Speaking about his race, Ricciardo noted that having been dumped out in Q1, RB elected to try something different with his soft tire start to the race, but he was unable to make up too much ground. He was able to sneak a fastest lap at the end of the race, which could prove crucial in former teammate Max Verstappen's title race with Lando Norris, the McLaren driver having been set for the bonus point until Ricciardo's last gasp effort. Obviously, after yesterday qualifying out of position, we knew we had to try something and maybe you get a safety car at the right time. From what I understand, it was a tough race for overtaking. Not too many people were carving through cars. We went aggressive at the beginning on the soft and just thought maybe we get lucky at some point, but it wasn't to be. If Max wins by a point, then I just guaranteed myself a nice Christmas present. Lando Norris has suggested he wasn't necessarily over-pushing after escaping from twice touching the wall without damage during a dominant drive to win Formula One's Singapore Grand Prix. The McLaren driver put in a statement drive to defeat championship rival Max Verstappen by over 20 seconds at the Marina Bay circuit, including leading at the end of the first lap from pole for the first time in his career. But during the race, he tweaked his front wing against the barrier on the exit of turn 14 after locking up and almost overshooting the corner, before nearly replicating the incident that forced George Russell out of last year's event on entry to turn 10 later in the race. Norris also ran wide when lapping Williams driver Franco Colapinto in the closing stages, though had plenty of margin for error at the turn 16-17 chicane. "It was an amazing race. A few too many close calls," said Norris. "I had a couple of little moments in the middle, but it was well controlled, I think. The car was mega, so I could push. We were flying the whole race, and at the end I could just chill. So it was nice." It's still tough. I'm a bit out of breath, but a very fun one. Asked whether he needed to be pushing so hard that mistakes were made given his dominance over the field, Norris replied, "It's not that you're necessarily over-pushing. Sometimes it can be that you're just chilling too much. Maybe it was a bit of both. I don't know what it is, it's tricky. It was still tough out there, easy to lock the tires like I did. So, I still pushed. I didn't want to have a 1-second lead. I wanted to have the biggest lead possible." On the difficulty of the race, the first Singapore GP without a safety car intervention, given the hot and humid conditions, he explained, "Similar to Qatar last year, but I wasn't taking it easy. I could have taken it a lot more easy, so a little dizzy at the minute." The result means that Norris closed in again on Verstappen's lead in the point standings, and, when questioned on the decreasing gap, the triple world champion insisted, "This also can change very quickly again. So we just need to keep on trying, keep to at one point try to overturn it a bit, not always finishing behind, but we'll see how that goes." Colapinto had a fantastic start, gaining 4 positions in the opening lap. He chased down Sergio Perez's Red Bull for the final points position, but had to settle for 11th place. Williams rookie driver Franco Colapinto has already cemented his name as a point scorer in Formula One. The rookie recovered from his first-place collision in Free Practice 1 to score points at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in just his second race for the team. With Alex Albon's 7th-place finish, Williams has now scored double points for the first time since the 2023 United States Grand Prix. Colapinto's achievement was further enhanced by the fact that he was the first Argentine driver to win points since Carlos Reutemann in 1982. After the Williams team decided to replace Logan Sargent for the final 9 races of the season, Colapinto was brought in to compete for the team starting at the Italian Grand Prix. The young rookie has already made a name in Formula One by scoring points in his second F1 race. It is very special, a dream come true. It is a long season still, and we have many races left together, but it is a great start, very motivating for the next race. Colapinto after Baku via F1. This season, Williams has battled in a competitive midfield battle, frequently missing out on points to teams like RB and Haas. They have 6 points going into Baku thanks to Albon's 3 P9 finishes at Silverstone, Monaco, and Monza. With 6 races left, they have jumped Alpine into 8th place in the constructors' standings, giving them an extra 10 points above Azerbaijan. Albon and Williams both tied for the best race finish. His performance in Baku ahead of Lewis Hamilton indicates that Williams made the right choice in bringing him in to replace Logan Sargent. But is it the right move from Williams to Colapinto to move away by the end of the 2024 season so Carlos Sainz can race for Williams in 2025? Carlos Sainz is a well-known name in Formula One. He is also a multiple Grand Prix winner. Being one of the drivers who can score points on a regular basis, Vowles and Williams believe that he can bring the team on a steady path of points along with Alex Albon. But with Colapinto's recent performance, it makes one wonder if it's right for Williams to ask the young Argentinian driver to make way for a well-known name in Formula One. Recently, Sainz hasn't left much of an impact. Although he did win a Grand Prix this season, Charles Leclerc, his teammate, has since won twice, one in Monaco and one in Monza. And during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix on Sunday, he and Sergio Perez collided into the wall. But that doesn't mean Colapinto doesn't make mistakes. He will make silly errors while driving, which every other driver does while racing. But in retrospect, compared to singing Sainz, Colapinto seems like a cheaper option for Williams, and he can bring in a huge amount of sponsors from Argentina. Keep in mind that Colapinto is young, and Williams can invest their time in molding him into a fantastic driver for the future. The Singapore Grand Prix is one of the most important races of the year. The annual night race is the most physically challenging on the track. It is one that truly tests the drivers. This is the race they spend all year training for. Going into qualifying, Mercedes were expected to be in the mix for Q3. Following this season's pattern, George Russell was expected to qualify higher than Lewis Hamilton, who has struggled in qualifying of late. However, Hamilton was quick in Q3. As McLaren and Red Bull locked out the front row with Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, Hamilton timed in right behind them in P3. Russell slotted in just behind his teammate, making it a Mercedes second-row lockout. With Ferrari starting the race from P9 and P10, and the other McLaren of Oscar Piastri in P5, a Hamilton podium looked likely. To start the race in Singapore, Mercedes put Lewis Hamilton on the soft tires. He and Ricciardo, who started the race in P16, were the only ones to take the risk. In Hamilton's case, it was an even bigger risk as he was starting in P3, while those around him started on the more favorable tires, the mediums. This is Singapore, where overtaking is difficult. Not to mention, the cars ahead of him were the McLaren and Red Bull of Norris and Verstappen with significantly faster packages. And was there to be an early safety car? The 7-time champion wouldn't be able to take advantage of it as everyone around him would put on the hards. Pitting early was also an unfavorable move as there would be no gaps to drop into, especially considering how much time the drivers lose in the pits in Singapore. It costs about 28 seconds to do a pit stop in Singapore. All in all, before the lights even went out, it looked like Hamilton's chance at a podium had been thrown away. His race was over before it even started. For his 350th Grand Prix start, Hamilton had quite the work cut out for him. Starting on the softs would be difficult. He found himself having to manage his tires early on in order to extend their lifespan as long as possible. Naturally, that infuriated his teammate behind him, who could obviously go faster on the more favorable medium tires. Hamilton managed his tires well, keeping them in good condition. However, Mercedes made the odd choice to call him in early. On lap 18, he was called into the pits where another odd choice was made. The mechanics fitted the hard tires onto Hamilton's cars. Drivers who had already been on the hard tires prior to him had already struggled with them. Hamilton himself went on to the team radio, questioning the early stop as well as the tire choice. His teammate, on the other hand, had the more favorable strategy, despite starting the race in a lower position. Russell started on the right tire choice, the mediums. By lap 27, Russell was already forecasted to come out ahead of Hamilton after pitting, and that same lap, Russell did pit and come out ahead of his teammate. Russell, with fewer laps on his hards, stayed well ahead of Hamilton until the checkered flag in Singapore. George Russell crossed the line in P4 and Lewis Hamilton in P6. Thus far, Lewis Hamilton has had 6 WDCs, 84 wins, 78 pole positions, and 152 podiums with Mercedes. His move to the Brackley-based team was heavily ridiculed and pushed as a career-ending move. However, the partnership between Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton has proven to be one of the most incredible Formula One has ever seen. When Hamilton signed a contract extension with Mercedes in August last year, it came as no surprise to anyone. For a long time, Hamilton set out to end his F1 career at Mercedes and become an ambassador for them after his retirement. However, all that changed when Ferrari announced that they have signed Lewis Hamilton as a driver for them, alongside Charles Leclerc for the 2025 season and beyond. Since then, there have been quite a few signs of tension between the Mercedes team and Lewis Hamilton. A few conspiracy theories and emails have made the rounds suggesting sabotage in the media. And with how events have unfolded at this year's Singapore Grand Prix, more are set to make the rounds with a pattern starting to look more clear. Whether these rumors reign true or not, what does remain a fact is that the Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes chapter is coming to an end, and in a rather sad way. The ideal way to sign off what has been an incredible chapter would be with a WDC-WCC, however, that has been far from the prospects in recent seasons. The 2024 Formula One season is nearing the end, with 6 rounds to go. In a few months' time, Lewis Hamilton will officially be a Scuderia Ferrari driver. How that chapter will unfold, time is yet to tell. That's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.